third Thursday of this month, right? What date?
First Wednesday is the multifamily, the third Thursday is the standard FIBI passenger.
Jeff has a new chapter in Culver City area.
Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Walker. My wife and I and a couple other partners run the FIBI West Side chapter. We meet typically the last Wednesday of every month. However, February, our meeting is next Wednesday. Our topic, we focus on the passive investor, and our topic for next week is using self-directed IRA accounts in passive investing. We have Karin Hall and Tony Watson as our panelists, and everyone is invited. You can sign up through Meetup or through the FIBI links, and we do an optional no-host dinner with the panelists that starts at 6 o'clock, and then the general meeting starts at 7-ish, and then after the meeting we do networking in the hotel bar until everybody leaves.
Awesome. So really late. So, and each chapter is run a little bit different. Like Christina actually will have panelists or speakers come up, or she'll do a presentation. What I really like about hers is she'll do a little networking session with a bunch of people where they have, like numbers, and they break up into little groups sometimes.
Forced networking. You actually have
Yes.
to talk to somebody else that you didn't know you beforehand. So that's intentional because you need to network in order to be successful in real estate. Last time I checked, maybe I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly,
You do it alone.
that's the hardest part too sometimes, is getting out there and networking and talking to people, and it's the most benefit you'll have, is just finding the resources in the room that you didn't know were there. And that's really the whole point, is everybody has resources, and we don't know how to always utilize those resources or know how to actually take advantage of them or use them in real estate. And everybody needs those resources to do this stuff. So it's a huge benefit. It makes everybody in the room stronger. And I feel like it's really the reason why all of the FIBI chapter leaders are really successful in real estate, is because of the networks that we've gained from these types of groups. So that being said, I'm going to hand it off to Dave, and he's going to talk about our sponsors and some of the upcoming events.
How's everyone doing tonight? Good. Thank you guys for braving this torrential Southern California snow/rainstorm coming. We were actually setting up, and I was like, nah, no one's going to be here tonight. It's raining, but we got the diehards here tonight, so thank you guys for coming. As Matt mentioned, we do have a no sales pitch environment, and what we're going to have today is discussion. We've got a great panel. I think we've got 3 people here that are all active short-term investors, different formats and how they acquired and own the property, but everyone's running a short-term business. So thank you guys for being a part of this tonight. As Matt mentioned, we do have some sponsors. That's how we do FIBI. FIBI is officially not-for-profit. We are a 501c3, so we are not into this to make money through the Real Estate Investment Club, and as Matt can attest, we have lost money every single year we've ever done FIBI. Not a lot, we kind of hope to break even every now and then, but we don't do this because of the money. We do this to meet people. We do this to share education. We do this to network with you. So, that's our main reason for doing this. So thank you guys for coming, and hope you meet someone here. Actually, I was talking to Amir here, and he was telling me, how long ago since you met that client? 5 years ago? 6 years ago, Amir came to a panel way back when. I think you've signed up for every other panel since, and this is the first time you've been back. But he met a client that he has since done 5 different deals with, right? Because he met someone, he talked to someone. That's how you do this. As Matt said, you got to network with people. So we're going to have, we have a set of questions that we've kind of put together, and we're going to kind of go through things in a logical order. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. If you have a question that's kind of a major topic that we're going to talk later on, we may ask you to hold that question, but please feel free to raise your hand. If you've got a very specific question about your set of circumstances, then what we're going to ask you to do is hold that until after the panel, and then you can either ask one of us or one of the panelists specifically about your question. So try to keep your questions more broader and general in nature. Save the specific stuff for after the panel. After the panel, which, you know, it's about a little before 7:30 here, so we try to get everything up and running by 7:30. We have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, and then we have, if you've never been here before, right across the courtyard here is North Italia. We've reserved the whole outdoor patio, which they do have the panels up, so it's covered and it's dry and it's warm. Heaters. It's actually sometimes when they do that, it gets too warm in there, so we always have to ask them to unzip a window to let some fresh air in. But we buy the food, you guys buy the drinks. So we've got a bunch of food ready to go, like right around 9:10. So as soon as we're done here, we know you're all gonna stand up and be excited and stretch your legs and start talking. We'll probably give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we're gonna try to move you out because we do have people standing by to break this room down, and we don't want them to have to stay here all night long waiting for us to network, especially when we've got free food just around the courtyard there. Our next panel that we're going to do is March the 13th, and it's called Preparing for the Downturn, and which we feel is a very topical kind of conversation to have in real estate. We've got three panelists. One of them is Jeremy Roll, Jeremy Roll is one of the guys that actually started FIBI. He's a full-time passive investor. He's literally been waiting on the sideline for 3 years, waiting for a crash so he could start buying assets again. And he can't wait to tell you his story next month. We've got Josh Satin, which runs a company called Gelt, which is a really sophisticated investor. They syndicate a lot of type of deals. We've done multiple deals with those guys. And then Robert Fergoso, who is a fix and flipper, who's also been a real estate investor for years. So 3 really sophisticated investors that are talking about what they're doing right now and what they're, you know, how they're kind of preparing for when there is a correction in the marketplace and what their strategies are. So March the 13th, if you haven't seen it already, it's on meetup.com. And if you can't find it on Meetup, just go to forinvestorsbuyinvestors.com, and all of our clubs, our club, Matt actually runs a club in Long Beach, Cerritos as well. As Christina mentioned, she really has 2 clubs now. Jeff just started his club. There's a great club down in Orange County. You know, we've got about 9 active chapters right now, so, you know, feel free to look for us on forinvestorsbuyinvestors.com. The way that we do break even is through sponsors. So we want to say thank you to a couple of sponsors. Spiro Woodward is a local real estate company. I don't think anyone's here from a law firm, excuse me, real estate company. They specialize in business and real estate law. And Stephen actually is going to be a panelist later in the year, really sophisticated investor. Brian here with Civic, raise your hand. These guys do private money lending, residential and commercial. So if you've got some questions on private money lending, you know, find Brian after the fact. Matt mentioned Carn Hall, or actually no, Jeff mentioned Carn Hall with UDirect is speaking at his next club. They're one of our sponsors as well. They've been a self-directed custodian that we've been doing business with for years. New Western is they are a company that does wholesale, but they are wholesale on steroids. Very sophisticated technology platform, and actually Dee's speaking in May, right, on systems in real estate. So those guys are one of our sponsors. Walker Dunlop, I don't see anyone here from Andrew's not here. Those guys do commercial lending. They're more traditional commercial lending. And then the Note Assistance Program, we've got the whole gang here today. These guys are I'll say note queens because you're all here today. In fact, they're doing next weekend, the 23rd and 24th. These guys are doing a 2-day clinic on notes and buying notes and analyzing notes. So if you specifically want to learn more about investing in notes, find one of the 4 of them after the fact, and they give you some more information.
And it's a $200 discount for the FIBI members that are attending tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've been doing it as well. It's really good. I'm going to another one in July for it, so I'm excited about it. It's a really good program. It teaches you everything you need to know about non-performing notes, really. So. Yeah. And then of course, Keller Williams Beach Cities is my brokerage here. They cut me a really great deal in this room. For that, we like to say $3.99. Yeah. It's not that good of a deal, but it's pretty close. So again, thank you guys for coming. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the panel, and the first thing we're going to do is, why don't you guys just give like a
kind of a high-level introduction on who you are, and then we'll jump into the questions. So Kyle, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I'm Kyle Muley. I, in my full-time job, run a tax advisory firm in Hermosa. We work with business owners, high net worth individuals to do kind of business management services as well as annual tax filings, all that fun stuff. In my spare time, my cousin Adam and I, who's with us tonight as well, run a short-term rental business. So we have 5 properties that we own ourselves and a couple others that we manage. So we've been kind of growing our portfolio there, and it's something I'm really excited and passionate about for sure.
My name is Jeff Pierce. I got 2 vacation rentals in Palm Springs kind of by accident. I usually do everything by accident. When I got into real estate, it was because I couldn't stand my day job, and then I got into real estate and did very well at it. And I started doing fix and flip only because in the year 2000 I saw, oh, my stock portfolio went all the way down to the bottom, but I'm way up on my property. So I sold that, bought another one, and I did that repeatedly. And I wrote the book because I'm passionate about vacation rentals. I have 2 in Palm Springs and 1 in Paso Robles. And I wrote it's 10 easy steps to hosting success. So I'm excited to be here and talk about the book and talk to you about my experiences.
I'm Elizabeth Renteria, and I like long walks on the beach. Wrong audience. Or maybe not the wrong Valentine's Day.
At least she didn't say she's an alcoholic.
I am a former digital producer and project manager. I transitioned my career to real estate investing just in recent years. I'm re-engineering my life, basically. And I have submerged myself in real estate education over the last 2.5, 3 years now. And I have submerged myself in that education in every capacity, whether it's classes, podcasts, blogs, books, workshops, etc. I jumped in and I bought my investment properties in downtown Long Beach, and that has been hands-on learning. Shortly after I bought my investment property, which is a small multifamily, I had a major plumbing problem, sewer problem. So I had to deal with that for months. It took quite a while because I had to work with the city and the neighbors. And eventually it worked out, but it was at that time that I ended up converting my traditional rentals to short-term rentals. Oh, and I also just bought another condo in downtown Long Beach that I'm rehabbing and flipping. The duplex, the small multifamily is a duplex, 2 units, and then I have another property closer to the water in Long Beach. And this year I'll be buying small multifamily and single family residence out of state, 3 different states that I've narrowed it down to.
My name is Matthew. I'm a CPA in California. A good one, Dave. All right. Every time.
When you choose to.
Yes, exactly. When I choose, yes. I flip houses for a living. I've done over 700 flips. We flip about 5 a month. We own a real estate brokerage in Memphis, and we do a lot of flips in a lot of different Midwest markets. We have about 10 million lent out to different flippers in different markets. We do a lot of value-add multifamilies. We help run FIBI here, and then I also have about 5 short-term rentals. I have 2 of them in Costa Mesa with Joe Klima here, and then we have 1 in Glendale, and then 1 in Garden Grove, and 1 in Memphis as well. I'm liking the out-of-state stuff because it cash flows already from the start, and it's just, obviously the ones near Orange County and stuff in Disneyland are doing great too. So, but you got to be careful about the cities and all that stuff. So, but it's a lot more fun than doing the accounting stuff, and that's why Dave calls me out on the CPA stuff all the time. But it's okay, Dave. It's all right.
I forgive you.
Matt claims to be a CPA. He's done a tax return in like 15 years, but that's okay. We'll let that roll. Thank God we got someone here who actually understands taxation. Speaking of which, we are here as investors, and even though while we do have a 1 CPA and a half, we don't have any attorneys up here. This is not meant to be for financial advice or legal advice. This is everything we're going to talk about here is purely our perspective as investors. So I just wanted to get that out.
You guys will notice that Dave also has a perfect tan year-round, whether it's dark outside or not.
That's because I sit next to Matt all the time, and I'm getting tan just being next to him. The light's reflecting off of his face. You should know better.
We gotta teach them something about short-term rentals.
So my name is David Coe. I am my daytime job is as a realtor here at Keller Williams B Cities. We specialize in South Bay real estate. We work with a lot of different investors, everything from single family fix and flip to long-term buy and hold, that type of things. My other day job is as an investor. I'm a partner in a new construction build up in North Hollywood. We've got some lots that are in an opportunity zone, which is something I've become hugely passionate and knowledgeable about. And then I've also been involved over the years in investing passively in different deals, running a note fund. I like the good thing I like about real estate is that it is the ultimate entrepreneurial business. I always say that a real estate license is like a license to print money. If you know how to, once you have that license, there's all kinds of things you get yourself involved in if you're networking and meeting people and looking for opportunities. So with that, we're going to jump into the panel. And the first question, and Kyle, I'll give it to you because I remember sitting at a LA25 networking event 3 or 4 years ago, and you were just really starting to kind of investigate the whole short-term rental things. Now that you've been doing it for a few years now, talk about some of the pros and cons of being a short-term rental investor.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of 2 quick anecdotes that demonstrate both sides of that. In our first year on one of our properties, we earned almost 1/3 of the purchase price in revenue from short-term rentals. Also, last night I was driving a U-Haul around LA until 11:45 p.m. So you see both sides of it, picking up furniture for our newest rental. So you kind of see that it's a business you're running. It's not an investment. It's really, you have to look at it as a hotel industry business. So it's a lot different than a long-term rental type situation or being a passive investor in a syndicated fund. There's a lot of things that you can't offload as far as the management goes and the operations goes, but at the same time, you're building a brand, you're building a business that you really have to take ownership in if you enter into this space. So it's been a really interesting learning experience. It definitely gets, I think, my creative juices flowing a lot as far as the opportunities that are out there. But it's not something to enter into lightly at the same time because of the amount of work involved in actually setting up and managing these properties.
Jeff, what about you?
Well, I echo everything Kyle said. You're really a hotelier. You are managing the check-in, the check-out, their experience. It's a lot of pressure to make sure that you get a good review in the end, but it's worth it because a long-term rental versus what I get on a short-term rental, it's about double. So that makes up for having to pay the TOT tax and a lot of that. And what's also nice too in this market, because I've been riding it up, I started about 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to have 3 different properties and ride all 3 of those up with the market. So you have to think about those ancillary benefits that you get by having a short-term rental and holding it, because it is kind of like a buy and hold. And you're able to make your expenses, and I've been lucky to be in the black right at the beginning. It was a no-brainer for me because the rent was double, and also what was a no-brainer for me was there's rightfully so, and probably your property management company too, they're very rigorous and strict about who they take in. And my first house in Palm Springs didn't have a pool. Can you imagine? It's 120 degrees in the summertime, and I'm trying to rent out a house without a pool. But I was able to market it in a way and price it in a way to tell people, hey, you're getting a 4-bedroom house for the price of a condo. And I was able to rent it to business folks in town for conventions and things like that, and people that were just looking for a bargain. And I also said in my ad, I said, use the savings and go to the hotel pools and listen to the DJs. You don't need to sit around. You don't need to sit around, your house pool. And I was able to save my money and then put in a pool, so now it's a viable rental. Yeah, so, to me, it's a no-brainer, but it's a lot of work. You're still in the U-Haul, and it's not just free money, you are earning it.
The pros for me are definitely the increased cash flow, and I really like having more control over my property. When I had long-term tenants, I had one tenant that I had inherited, and after moving out, my unit was just trashed. It took me a long time to recover from that. So I really like having the control over my property and the condition that it's in at all times. I get to see it on a regular basis. I get to be inside. I get to know that it is cleaned, sparkling clean all the time, and that it's well maintained, and that the repairs are kept on top of. That's definitely a pro. The cons, sometimes they're just weird people. Sometimes people are just odd. It is a lot of work, but I don't necessarily consider that a con because I thoroughly enjoy it, and I like being involved, and I like the hands-on because I get to learn.
Kyle, for you and what you've got set up, talk about legally kind of how you set things up. You know, is there any special insurance, any operational efficiencies that you've kind of structured to make everything work? Just kind of talk about how the infrastructure of the rentals and how that is set up.
Tax structure.
Talk to your attorneys and accountants often about everything you do before you do it. No, I mean, so there's a tons of different structures out there as far as how you can hold title, how you do the financing or insurance on it as well. I think, you know, one of the recurring themes of tonight is probably going to be create a really strong team around you. And there's a lot of pillars that you're building off of with that team. So making sure that you have people that have experience in short-term rentals, because it's a different beast than a lot of other industries. As your professional advisors in all of those different buckets is really important. So, you know, as far as specific ways that we've structured ours, you know, we've tried to acquire them with as little capital as possible for the most part. And there's a lot of properties that are really good short-term rentals that are being marketed, fully furnished and things like that as well, which really helps kind of with the initial setup. So we've focused on that kind of stuff. We actually are just in the process of closing on our first property in California, so we've done everything out of state so far. And we manage them all ourselves. We don't have any property management companies or anything like that either. Both of us work full-time jobs, and we've found a way to streamline the management systems enough to make that work. But yeah, I would say the main point of that is to find your professionals, utilize them, leverage them as much as you can, because that's really the pillars that you can build this type of business off of.
Jeff, how are you structuring yours? Do you have a separate entity or?
Where's that question?
Oh, okay.
Let's go through this and we'll start answering
Yeah.
questions after this question.
Well, again, mine all came organically. I owned 2 houses and decided to turn one to a vacation rental, then shortly thereafter, the next one. So I own them personally, and all 3 are in California, 2 are in Palm Springs, one's in Paso Robles. What was happening, we had a looming ban on vacation rentals. At that point, when I was looking to get a 3rd one, and the market hadn't peaked yet, and we were having these discussions about what to do about the downturn, I decided to diversify one geographically and the other because the vacation rental ban was a real concern. And I bought that one up in Paso Robles. But I already had, and like I said, it was organic, so I owned the houses, I bought them personally, normal realtors, normal loans, all that good stuff. And I already had an S-Corp, so I run the property management part through an S-Corp, but I would say just do whatever makes sense legally and not gonna get you in trouble, and make sure you dot all your I's and cross your T's and everything foots with all your different taxing authorities.
I may not have everything set up perfectly legally, but I have talked to people over at Robert Hall and Associates who I've worked with, and I have my short-term rental business running through an LLC. I have my properties in my name. I have a property in my name. I have another property that's also in my LLC. Based on Robert Hall and Associates, I know that the rental income from short-term rentals is still considered passive income at this point. Like I said, for me, I just run it through an LLC, the business itself.
One quick caveat on that, it's not always the case. So when you're providing other services in conjunction with an Airbnb, it's considered a full business. You have to file as either Schedule C or on a business tax return. So that could be considered self-employment income. Just a quick note on that. So if you're not providing like breakfast and other activities and things like that, it's passive income, files on a rental schedule the same as any other rental income property would. But if you're providing other ancillary services, it files as a separate business on a Schedule C with all the associated forms and schedules attached to it.
And you gotta be careful too, because if it could be substance over form, if you have hundreds of these things or tons of them and it's really a business, then it could be considered, you might have some taxes associated with that or some payroll that you need to pay yourself as a sub.
An extra 16% in taxes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and one other thing that I think is important, you guys seem to all be buying these properties. At this time of the market in California, you really want to evaluate these things from the purchase perspective, okay? And it should stand alone working with the purchase. If you're not hoping for that appreciation, like if you bought it at the right time of the market, great, you might want to buy it and then wait for the appreciation along with the short-term rental income. But right now, you may not want to buy that property at the top of the market in California, and the sublease strategy where you sublease it from a landlord works really, really well and has a gigantic return on investment. Now your risks there are that, the landlord stops the lease in year one and you just put in a bunch of money and didn't get all your money back. So a long-term lease is important, those types of things, you can mitigate the risk there. Thanks, man. And you want to be very careful when you're leasing these to understand and be very straightforward with the people you're subleasing from because of the insurance issues and the changes in those issues. You have new types of insurance for short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. There's always clauses in insurance policies that say you can't do short-term rentals, so you have to have a specialty policy for that specifically. Some of the other benefits that you guys were mentioning as far as the pros and cons of short-term rentals, you have a lot of other benefits compared to long-term rentals. You don't have the turnover costs associated with this. You don't have major vacancy issues and things like that if you know how to market correctly on your short-term rentals. And the tenant turnover is huge on these things. So you're not subject to tenant landlord laws or rent control issues in certain areas that's an issue. So there's a lot of other auxiliary benefits comparative to a long-term rental that you wouldn't normally think of, So, and this is all what you want to be marketing to people that own the properties, to sublease those properties and show them that. Joe and I developed like a nice little projection of showing, hey, this is all the benefits from a short-term rental perspective. If you're the landlord, that will help you, so and if you're a business owner doing this from a landlord perspective, you're much less of a risk than a normal tenant in a lot of cases if you have a good financial situation and things like that. So that being said, we got a couple questions here. Let's start here and I'll come to you afterwards.
For Kyle and Jeff, you guys said that you guys are doing a lot of the back work on the U-Hauls. I just wanted to hear about some of your systems that you put in place to take a little of that work off your back. Maybe you're using cleaning companies instead of cleaning yourself and things like that.
Go ahead.
The operational side.
So, yeah, we've really tried to focus on outsourcing some of the operational standpoint stuff and retaining our own touch on a lot of the actual setup. I think that's really where there's the most value add. So we've really streamlined like the messaging platforms and stuff like that and automated as much as possible. We've automated our cleaning schedules with our cleaners. We've automated a lot of the kind of synergy between the different platforms to make sure that those calendars are all talking to each other and synced up. So as far as like managing the day-to-day tenants in and out, I try to not get involved in that as much as possible. But when it comes to picking out furniture, how's the house gonna look? What's the experience gonna be like when people walk in there? That's really where I think there's a ton of value add for us to be really involved. Now, I don't wanna be driving U-Hauls around every night doing that, but there's a time and a place where I think that's a good spend of my time. So that's kind of been our approach so far here.
And what are the platforms you use to sync them all together?
I promised my cousin I wouldn't mention any specific apps, because that's part of our secret sauce. But, so, I mean, if you look up anything on calendar integrations, on syncing Airbnb or VRBO, there's tons of articles out there about how to do that, and there's a lot of third-party apps too. So the things that we've experienced is that the more that you really go out there and test different ones, they're going to be ones that are a good fit for you and your platform. There's no cookie cutter like this is the best fit for everything that anyone could ever do on these platforms. So my advice is go test them out, mess around with it, see if it works for you, and really kind of don't be agnostic as to which platform you're using, which third-party app you're using, but try them out and see how it goes.
And a lot of these apps, they're not perfect. Like there's one called Guesty. If you guys just Google Guesty competitors or something like that, you'll find a lot of them out there. And sometimes they have kinks or problems with them, or they're way too expensive. Like I've heard some bad things about Guesty, for example.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look, this is such a fast-growing market right now that I've been on phone calls with CEOs of app development companies, a lot over the past year, to talk to them about how to improve their product, how to make it work better for what we're doing with it. So being hands-on with finding those apps and really working with the people who are developing them really pays off too, because there are specific things where we want it to do this differently. We're just calling in whoever we can at the app to say, hey, can you do this? And they'll say yes, because they want to grow their app. They want to have it work better for people, and we're a good test case for a lot of the stuff that they're playing around with on their side as well.
My approach is a little different in that right now I only use one app. I use Airbnb, and that's been able to fill up my calendar. I just did everything organically. I started with Airbnb, and I noticed, hey, my calendar's all filled up. It's pretty seamless for me because it's right there in the app. And I actually am in the middle of every single guest transaction and every single handyman in person that's going out. I have full and complete control, so I know what the left hand is doing with the right hand. I mean, the left hand knows that's it. Anyway, the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and even though I can't say that. But I'm in the middle of the whole thing. I don't know whether it's a control thing or what, but it works for me. And if I do slip and I forget to tell someone, hey, someone's staying a midweek stay, that's where I usually trip up and I forget to tell them, the gardener's coming, so please don't sunbathe between 2 and 4 on a Wednesday. And I get caught in some things that I forget or that aren't written down sometimes, or the schedules change. But for the most part, I'm in the middle. I'm communicating with the guests before they come. I'm making a deal with them before they come. And we cut each other slack. So if something's wrong with the house, they let me know and I come out and I fix it right away. Or I get someone from my team to fix it right away, and I make sure that they're happy so that I do get a good review, and I give them a good review too. I'm very appreciative for them letting me know that the system in the house is not operating correctly or what have you. But it's very, very hands-on in my approach. But it's mechanical too. I can do these things in my sleep. I set alarms on my iPhone that tell the pool guy which house to go to which day, because he goes 2 days a week and there's an optimal day for him to go. So everything's just kind of routine and built in to my whole DNA.
And there's something to be said about that too, hands-on like that, to learn this process beforehand, because there's so many things that we learn just in the first year of running it, that you have to deal with. Like, don't go over to a house when a guy is really pissed off about cleaning because he might try to fight you. I almost got beat up by an MMA fighter. He almost took out his teeth because there was dirt on the baseboard. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, bro. You're like this mad over this? And these are the things you deal with and the cons of this stuff, that you learn how to handle these situations, and the communication to get the 5 stars every time is really important. But then you can have sometimes better communication with the automation piece of it, where you have automated emails that go out each time as well, that you can set this stuff up so that, because the communications can be a lot if you're trying to scale. If you're doing, a couple of them to get started, it's not as much, but when you start getting higher up, you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8 of these things, you need to have somebody doing communication for you. It's key. How do you deal with the operations piece?
I manage my units on my own 100%. I have team members that I have on board that help me with different things that have to happen on a regular basis. For example, who manages trash day? That's a big one because you don't want your guests taking the trash out and bringing it in. So I have a cleaning team. I have someone that manages, helps me with maintenance and repairs, and I have someone that manages trash day. I use my platforms to sync my calendars. So I use the Airbnb syncing function, and then I also list on HomeAway, which is VRBO, and it's VRBO, HomeAway, and now Expedia, because Expedia wanted to get into the short-term rental game and they bought HomeAway. So I really only list on 2 platforms, but I have reservations from all those platforms that I just mentioned. And I sync my calendars using the platforms. There are definitely tools, third-party apps that can be used, like Guesty. There's another one called Tokeet, T-O-K-E-E-T.
Tokeet. Right?
Tokeet that I've explored, but I don't use it. There are there are so many third-party apps and businesses that have popped up as a result of this industry. So if you Google it, you're going to find 50 third-party apps just for syncing your calendars. So you have to figure out what's comfortable for you. For me, I like to just keep things simple, so I use the platforms.
And make sure you do your homework on those things, because there is a lot of problems with these things, and they don't sync right for the calendars, and you get double bookings. You can have major issues if you don't do it right. So, you got a question here?
You sort of stole along my thunder. But anyway, I was going to ask. It sounds like Kyle, Jeff, and Elizabeth all own their properties, but you said that you also have a couple that you lease. What are the differences between owning the property and leasing the property?
You guys all own yours outright, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've explored a lot on the lease to rent model as well. And I mean, the main thing you're giving up there is control and appreciation. So if you're not the property owner, you don't have carte blanche of what you can do with that property. You have to get approvals or fall within the lease characteristics or whatever the case is there. So you're giving up something there. You're getting an easy out. You don't have any equity tied up into it. You can just leave whenever the lease term is up. You're not getting any appreciation on the property either. You might be leaving a lot of the work that you did with the property if you've cleaned it up or rehabbed it or improved it in any way too. So it's a different model. I think you have to find the right fit for the type of property that you're looking at. We've done all single family homes and found that that's the best way to do that is to purchase and kind of participate in a more long-term plan with them. But you can pop up shop, rent out a place, get it up and running in a couple days kind of deal if you do the lease to rent option.
And if you can't afford, but you'll.
Yeah, great way to get going for sure.
But you want to get into the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's ways to finance some of this stuff too, right? So like you can finance for furniture, you can finance a lot of those costs as well. It obviously increases the risk of that happening, or of default if that happens. And you want to make sure, sometimes they overprice these, the rentals because they know what you're doing and they try to get a bump up. I have one in Glendale and my mom tried to get more rents for me, so she owns the building. And she's like, well, I think you should pay an extra $250 a month in rent for doing this. And I'm like, you know how many benefits you're getting? Let me give you my list. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But these types of things, probably some of the cons,
So, you guys are talking about setting up the property. It sounds like that's where like the fun is, right? And also the
nightmares.
So talk to Elizabeth. You take this one first. Like, talk about setting up a property. What are some, when you had yours, as you're looking at new ones, like what's the key to setting up a property right the first time?
Setting up is definitely fun. It's the fun part. So the way I start is I figure out who is my guest. I need to know first who I want to have in my house, who do I want to serve, who do I want to cater to, because by making that decision, it helps me in the decision-making process throughout the entire setup. It'll help me decide which coffee maker, to which couch, to which bedding, etc. So I make that decision first, and then I create what I refer to as mood boards. So I just take inspiration from photographs. I look on Pinterest, I look in magazines, I look in books, and I have some general idea going into it of what I want the look and feel to be, whether it's coloring, furniture items, the texture. And the reason I make the decision up front is, for example, if you have families with young kids, you may choose a different couch, for example, for the kids. Or if you decide you want to have pets in your unit, then you'll make decisions on the furniture accordingly. So I usually make these mood boards with colors, pictures, the type of furniture I want, and then I start shopping. And that's really a guideline to help me so that I have some type of target so I know when I found what I'm looking for. And there is definitely the move in, as you mentioned. You're physically moving in just as you would, if you're moving your own residence. You're physically moving all the furniture in, you're setting up shelves, electronics, you're stocking your shelves with linens, towels, utensils, dishes, glasses, mugs, everything that you use in your own home you want to be able to provide so that the guest has the comforts of home. And I also do a lot of writing. I write my descriptions for the listings. I get my cleaning team on board and making sure that they're trained for that particular unit, and make sure that we know how we're going to manage the schedule. And I set up the other items, like I said, trash day, maintenance, repair, etc. And that's it. And then I manage the reservations.
A little bit about the trash. Unfortunately, in Palm Springs, we have something called estate service because there's so many second homes and such. They'll come in and they'll take the trash and bring it back and forth for you. And for the longest time in Paso Robles, I just figured they didn't have that same service. And I was going nuts with it, right?
Yes.
Because if you miss it, then the next guest coming, it's mounting and mounting. Then I finally got, I don't know, I phrased the question the right way and found out Paso Robles had an estate service. And so that, you can look into doing that. I don't know if Long Beach does or not, but that saves my life as far as that.
You mean
part
the
is
city
concerned.
itself, right?
The contractor that, so the disposal services of Palm Springs or Paso Robles actually offers that as an add-on.
And it's horrible. We've got a 3-star review for having trash cans full of the street on trash day. You're like, these people, like, you're talking about a hotel business, so, and trash cans and pools are a giant headache. If you have to go to the property again just for that once a week, that's a lot of work, just for one house, let alone if you have 20 of them, or 5 of them, or 3 of them, or whatever, it starts to add up.
Yeah, and then as far as setting up, as far as the decorating aspect, for me it was sort of easy because I didn't really have much of a choice. To me it was, I'm in Palm Springs, when it was a mid-century modern house, so I've got to go after that mid-century modern theme and vibe that everyone goes to Palm Springs for. And then in Paso Robles, I have an interior designer friend, thankfully, but maybe I would have come up with the same concept. He went after a country modern look. So it was a California ranch house built in 1948, went with something, sophisticated, but always durable. It doesn't matter who we're expecting. It could be the Queen of England. We still want vinyl. We want to be able to hose stuff off and wipe it down. So we try to stay away from fabrics as much as we can. And that's really a theme. And also, it's also good to make something out of nothing, I say. In Palm Springs, one of the houses, each of them is named after a Hollywood star. So we've got the Marilyn Monroe room, this Taylor room, etc. You just make things fun, right? And they all have a different color as well. Just those kind of schemes people really do latch onto, and it makes it fun for them. But I have to say, if I were in a city or a situation where I had a little bit more palette or things to decide from, my best resource is to go to Airbnb itself, see who's a super host in your area, and see how often they're renting. And you can see that from how many reviews they have recently. So we're in February, you could look and see, oh, this person rented 4 times in January. They're probably hitting it every weekend, so they're pretty busy. You can see their track record. How do they furnish it? What are the comments? What are the reviews, their reviews like? You can see what's important to people. Then look at the ones that don't have very good ratings. see, when I was putting the place in Paso Robles on the market, I saw that cooking gear was really big. People were complaining there wasn't enough cooking gear. People like to have wine and then come home and cook a nice meal. So you can get those clues from the platform itself and get an idea, as well as magazines and Pinterest and things like that.
Excuse me? Tell me about it.
Yeah, I would definitely reiterate, know your market and know your target demographic. So, find out who's going to your location, why are they going there, what are they interested in doing while they're there, what's the average group size, are they typically bringing kids, is it extended families, that kind of stuff. So you really want to set up a property to cater to the needs of your travelers. So with the first property that we purchased, unfurnished 4-bedroom home, and we're in this fairly small town, very limited resources as far as stores go. I've never been in and out of a Walmart more times in my entire life in a day.
Yeah.
And it was miserable. I mean, and the results spoke to it too. I mean, we've been working on improving all the furniture in that house since then, because we didn't go into it with like a plan of attack to say, here's all the furniture we want to get beforehand and things like that. So that was a huge learning experience for us. But just with the assumption that we could, go into this town and buy all the stuff we needed. But definitely look into the other listings. I think that's a really great way to get ideas and to get inspiration and to look at how you can improve on what they're doing as well. So it's pretty clear if you type in a location, all the top search results are right there. And Airbnb does a lot of SEO to determine who's in that top list. So if you're trying to be in that top list, which if you want to be successful on that platform, you have to be, because an average Airbnb user makes a decision within 11 and a half minutes of where they're staying. So you don't have time to go to page 3 or page 4. They're looking at page 1 and 2 and making a decision based off that. So you want your listing to pop, to look good. Good pictures is super important, so either hire a professional photographer or find someone who can take some good pictures for you. But that's really, the photogenic aspect of the property is hugely important for sure.
I think people underplay how hard it is to design a unit. Like, especially if you don't have a lot of design experience, then go get a designer or find somebody that can do it, because it's not easy to pick out furniture and do all that and say, does this match or does this match? I mean, how often do people normally do this? Like one time when they buy their house and they slowly get stuff, or when they move. Unless you have somebody doing this a lot, it's not easy to do that piece, so.
Yeah, you're basically accumulating, full house worth of stuff, because it has to be fully stocked. The kitchen has to have everything. So usually people do that over a lifetime. They've gotten, utensils from their parents when they moved out first, and they've, added all these things as they've gone on and on. But you're doing that from day one, everything from scratch. So it's a huge amount of work, and there's so many things that you don't think of until someone's like, oh, this, you're missing this particular item, whatever it is. So we have a comprehensive list now that's like, we know exactly what we need when we're furnishing a house from scratch. But that list was born out of mistakes. And there's resources out there now. If you Google furniture list or amenities list and things like that, it will have everything in there for kitchens and all that kind of stuff. But make sure you do your homework ahead of time to get that set up.
Joe? My name's Joe, and I have a couple units with Matt. We have a short-term rental enterprise, and every question that's been asked, I've had to answer to bounce around in my head, and I've been sitting on my hands here trying to hold back. But just to throw a few things, there's so many things going on in my head, but like with respect to furnishing a property, we had some allies that gave us some spreadsheets that had a bunch of things on them. But I took every item on their spreadsheets. I looked up those items on Amazon. I made a list, a permanently saved list on Amazon. And so the next time we go to furnish a unit, I push a button. Okay? And I made a list for every room. So like kitchen, I spent $1,000 on stuff in the kitchen. Just like we're talking about every appliance you can think of: rice cooker, toaster, blender, hand blender, dishes, pots and pans, anything you can think of, all sorts of stuff. And the thing is, in the closet, there's a steamer for business levelers, there's a ironing board, iron, a vacuum cleaner, a baby stroller, a utility cart, a high chair. And then there's pictures. The pictures, everything that they talked about, I've got, bouncing around in my head. And so it's not inexpensive, but what happens is when it's highly furnished, you get reviews like, this place has everything. And then what happens is, anybody who goes and sees that, and when they're deciding on a place to stay, they say, it's sparkling clean, it has everything, and the bed is the most comfortable bed that I've ever slept in my life. Bang, we've got 5-star reviews. We've got 25 reviews on 2 units in the last 5 months. One of them has been a 4-star review.
It's awesome.
All of them, all the other ones have been a 5-star.
And it comes down to what Elizabeth was saying, is who are you trying to serve, right? All those amenities, those are the things that I would want when I'm traveling. Do I want all these, a blender and a rice cooker and a steamer and all that stuff? Yes. And who are you trying to serve? Are you serving the kids that you should have, the strollers there? When you're a parent, do you want to go through and bring a car seat and a stroller in and all that extra stuff? It really adds up. So, it's a big deal. But
let me keep going just for a second. So we've got
We have other questions.
we've got technology. I don't know if you guys are going to talk about technology.
we are. Well, I have a question on there for that one. So let me go here and then I'll go right here over there.
I was gonna ask you guys, do you guys feel your systems are set up for you to scale, or do you even want to scale, or are you happy where you're at?
I'm happy where I'm at. I think I could scale. And there are certain things I'm testing out booking.com, so I am gonna figure out the whole merging of the calendars, etc. And I can scale as far, a lot of my stuff is repeatable, so when I do a communication, it's repeated, and I'm not dropping balls. But it would be great to have another meet, I think. So.
Because it sounds like you're doing a lot of the work.
Oh, I am.
You have
I
still, you gotta delegate that.
I delegate something. I do have someone I delegate to Paso Robles because I can't run there with a U-Haul and do things like that. And a lot of things get mistranslated, and then I end up unwinding things and the mistakes that are made. But for the most part, I can handle it, having the long distance one. And so I would like, if there's other technology to be able to scale, such as there's things that protect your investment, like the smoke detector for sound, noise aware. So that's the biggest enemy of a vacation rental is noise, and parking. The other thing, if there's too many cars using up the whole street, and those are the enemies of vacation rentals that lead to neighbors wanting to ban them and cities wanting to ban them, etc. But I use that type of technology, so I know when the noise is too loud. But as far as the communication things, I would love to figure out a way or see a platform that automates a lot of the mundane type of stuff, but a lot of it is the personal communication and knowing that the guest has a special request and accommodating that, because the regular communication, you can just run all day and all night, but it's the special request that you really have to pay attention to, and that's what's gonna get you the 5 stars.
Question over here.
Yeah, so I had a question on acquisition. How do you decide which areas are the best that have the highest profit margin? Do you use things like AirDNA? That's one question. The other question is, if you are doing like a sublease situation, what type of properties do you think are the best to convince landlords that you're gonna, which ones do you give the benefit list? 'Cause I'm sure you don't give them to every type of property.
Yeah, so, the first answer is go where you want to travel and where you want to spend time. So, I'm a big believer in kind of validating empirical data with data from platforms like AirDNA. So we first looked at where's some places that we've traveled to that we just loved the area, that seem underserved also as far as opportunities for Airbnb go. So that was something that we spent a lot of time on the front end of really evaluating like what markets fall into that type of category for us. And there's a ton of tools out there for evaluating it. So you can really get a lot of data on revenue projections for different submarkets, and those have held fairly consistently true for us as far as the data that we originally pulled. And we basically looked at where can you get the most bang for your buck. So we're gonna generate the highest revenue with the lowest kind of entry point for that market. We've always wanted to scale. That was our goal from day one, was to really kind of build a portfolio of these properties in a lot of different markets. So that, you know, our whole MO is evaluating these markets that we like already by looking at the data and verifying that what we feel like is a good market is truly a good market.
I think you should start where it's close to you for your first one, because it'll make it a lot easier for setup, for handling problems, all that stuff. But in reality, it all comes down to the numbers. And you know, the AirDNAs, the data sources, they can be a great starting point for this stuff, but there's skewed data in there, right? Because there's a lot of people that rent it out haphazardly and don't do it professionally and all that stuff, and don't have, like, you know, great pricing because they're doing, you know, not great furniture. And so you have to, it's like comping a house, right? You're gonna go look at a comparable listing on Airbnb and VRBO and these other listings to see what they rent for. But you can't even necessarily look in the first like 30 days, because if they have smart pricing on, they might have a lower rate for that period of time, and see how occupied that person is. And you want to look at the ones that have a lot of reviews, that are Superhost, maybe the Airbnb Pluses, see how they do it and what their reviews are and how they set everything up and where they're at. And look out 3 months and see what their pricing is 3 months later or 2 months later, and do that kind of comparison and come up with your monthly budget and say, okay, who am I gonna serve? How much is it going to rent for, and come up with comps on that, and then do your budget and say, is it profitable in the first place? Because some of them just aren't. You know, like you can go and you know, you can't do it in Hermosa, but in some cases, if you're paying, you know, $8 grand a month or something in rent for a place in Hermosa, you might have a real hard time covering that on a short-term rental standpoint. You know, so there's intricacies like that when you're analyzing these things, but you're really looking for the hot spots, like anything near Disneyland, which you got to be careful because it's banned in Anaheim, right? Anything near like the beach areas, or you know, tourist areas can be huge. Near hospitals, it's like, who are you going to serve? Are you going to serve long-term hospital stays? In Memphis, we're getting 30-day plus stays sometimes for business travelers and that kind of thing. So it's like, who are you serving? But in Memphis, it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house that has everything set up for business travelers, really, and we still have the same stroller stuff and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's looking at the math first and finding the right locations and something that you can manage yourself first. And the data sources are good, but not perfect for you, you know? Make sense? We had another question here.
That answered part of my question, is as you go through the portfolio, how are you assessing markets? And then how does the property type build into that? And then how are you buying those? Are you buying those off market? Are you buying them retail? You have to get them at a discount in order to give you another exit strategy. And then second part of the question is, how is the looming, it's the Wild West right now, so how is the looming legislation affecting your plans, or do you feel good about the longevity of this sort of income? All that.
I feel great about the future of these short-term rental platforms and businesses. We are in a shared economy now, whether it's Uber or Lyft or sharing your vehicle, sharing your bicycle, having your pet sitter, etc. So I think that shared economy is here to stay. It's going to be here for quite a while. As far as the properties and what I look for when I make offers on properties, if I'm considering it as a short-term rental, one rule of thumb is I do not calculate my numbers based only on short-term rental revenue. I always only base it on what I would get as a traditional long-term rental. Because I never know what's going to happen, or I may change my mind at some point, but I want to make sure that I have at least a couple of exit strategies. I don't want to base it on Airbnb and then the city ban it and then that's gone. And some of the things I look for in properties when I'm considering short-term rentals is the access. How easy is it for the guest to access? Is it right near the neighbor's bedroom window? Is it on, I don't know, the third floor and you have to carry luggage up 3 flights of floors? Is there an elevator? Is there a code to get into a building and then get into the actual unit? So access is a really big consideration, because if people are coming in late, you don't want the neighbors to be disturbed, you don't want the neighbors to shut you down, you don't want them to be complaining that people are making too much noise, they're dragging their luggage in and out. So I take those things into consideration.
We actually had, we were close to having someone from Airbnb on the panel tonight, and they actually couldn't do it because we live broadcast it. They had a concern about being on a panel where we're broadcasting it live. But one of the things they were talking about specifically on the legislation is they talked about this as there's been kind of like 3 waves of how communities are reacting to short-term rentals. The first wave was they didn't do anything, right? Everyone started renting and neighbors started complaining and people were throwing big parties, right? So the second wave that came in is the cities just said, no way, we're shutting it down, right? But now that there seems to have been like this third wave that we're going through, the city of Los Angeles just announced a bunch of regulation on short-term rentals, and I think they're still working on some phases of that. Cities are now trying to figure out, because this is a shared kind of co-living type of world that we're migrating into, and I think now cities are starting to look into, how can you work with landlords and that want to do some type of short-term living space. So I would think that's a really important part as you're looking for markets, is looking at cities and trying to get a sense of maybe who may be changing their point of view on short-term rentals, and instead of doing an outright ban, trying to find some way of structuring it to where they can tax it and make it a legal part of the city. So
it all comes down to money, right? I mean, the cities are getting revenue from this, and when I spoke with the city council meeting in Garden Grove, the revenues based on the data stores like Airbnb and stuff like that, based on the average nightly stays and the number of people in those areas that are doing it, it would have covered $3 million out of $4 million deficit for the city. But they had the people with no short-term rental t-shirts on there going, oh, we have parties at my next door in my house every day, and you're like, well, call the police every day. They're gonna be shut down immediately, if that happens. And you have to understand, you're dealing with city council members, and they have to understand this. So their immediate knee-jerk reaction is, we're not doing anything, or we're just gonna say, no, you can't do it, So, and a lot of them don't have enforcement, they don't have those types of things, but you can find this in the city codes and go to the code enforcement offices and talk with them. A lot of the people that don't know better will say, oh no, you can't do that, that's not, you can do it, but you can look on their code and see there's now sites out there you can do research and say what cities are okay with this and not. And there's actually articles out there that people have done the research and stuff like that for you. So start there before you ever go to a city. See where it's okay first, and just avoid the ones that aren't. Just to start off. So.
Yeah, I would also add to be a responsible host for your community. So, we're a big believer in being a part of the community and giving back to the communities that we're in. And we've handled that in a couple different ways. And we were touring properties with a realtor a couple weeks ago, and she was pointing out a specific short-term rental that was very profitable. I mean, this guy was booked solid, beautiful house, but he's right on top of his neighbors. He was packing 25 people into this house. It was a constant battle with his neighbors. They were blasting air horns at guests because of how bad it got. So you really have to think about when you're considering putting people in a short-term basis into a house. Is that a good fit? Is that the best use of that property? So we look at private, more private spaces. So we don't want immediate neighbors encroaching on us. We also look at markets that have really strong tourism industries. So, growing up, my parents ran a bed and breakfast out of our house in Keystone, Colorado for my entire childhood. There was existing B&Bs and short-term rentals long before Airbnb ever came around. They just were only in these towns that were exclusively tourism destinations. So it wasn't that your neighbor in LA County was renting out their house on that kind of basis, but it existed long before these platforms. So I think there's a way to do it responsibly, and a lot of that is finding the right property where Airbnb truly is the best use of the property, not trying to force that use on a property that's not a good fit for that.
And I'd say also find a town that has a mature policy on it. For instance, Palm Springs was pretty strict, but at the same time, we were getting a more and more strict ordinance. The neighbors were up in arms, and then the ban was coming. But the ordinance rolled out, and it's it limits how many people you can have in the house, daytime, nighttime, how many cars you can have. You have to have paperwork signed when the guests come. You have to do a personal check-in. There's a lot of, the taxes have to be, done every, and there's all kinds of audits they do. So you have to make sure your federal return matches what you're telling the city. They're up in you. You've got to really pay attention. But so that kind of limits the risk, right? It's kind of taking it to the edge. So now there's this equilibrium where we're living this world where there's the hosts and the guests and the residents that live there full time, and everyone's kind of coexisting right now. But that being said, you also want to be in a neighborhood within that municipality where you go and look at Airbnb again, see if there's vacation rentals near where you're thinking about having one. So if that's a section of town that's more second homes, there's already vacation rentals there. People are used to that transient. So you don't want to be deep in a tract neighborhood where you see swing sets and basketball hoops and things like that. That's not good for either party, right? Your guests aren't going to want to hear kids, and the kids aren't going to want to hear the partiers or whoever it is coming in all hours. So, look at your municipality, and then once you decide where you want to go, that you like to go, that you mentioned, someplace that you already like to go, but then figure out, is there street parking? Can it accommodate it, and what kind of neighbors are you next to and on top of?
It's pretty cool to go through and write down a list of every place in the world you want to go so you can buy one.
How do you handle parties? I mean, I know it happens. Like, what happens when you have a party? How do you handle it?
I do not accept parties at all on my property, and fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. It's part of my policies and procedures. So I list the information on my description on my listing, and I include it in my house rules. I include it in my house manual. I also include it in the messaging that goes out prior to the guest's arrival. And fortunately, I haven't had too many party problems. I've had a couple of people that I know partied after the fact. Fortunately, they weren't a disturbance to any of the neighbors. And one other occasion where I thought that they might be partying or making too much noise, I just send them a reminder through the website, and I remind them that that information of no parties allowed is on the listing, on the house manual, and the house rules, and I just send a friendly reminder as it's happening.
How'd you know they were partying?
I have a Ring camera, a Ring spotlight camera, so that gives me a lot of peace of mind. I can see what's going on, who's coming in and out, and initially I have to admit it was almost, I felt like maybe ignorance is bliss, and maybe I don't want to know everything, but it's really given me a lot of peace of mind.
So let's talk about technology, because so far we've mentioned the Ring, we've mentioned the noise detector. Talk about some of the technology that you put to kind of be able to keep an eye on the property and the process on how you use that technology to communicate to your guests.
Yeah, so following up on the Ring spotlight camera, it's not the Ring doorbell, it's a spotlight camera, so I have it mounted only at the entrance, and I have a peace of mind because when I was letting go of control of checking every guest in myself, I still wanted to have some type of a view of who's coming into the house. So I use that to see who's coming in. The Ring cameras also have a voice that you can speak through. So for example, if my guest is having a hard time just entering, I could actually talk to them and walk them through the process. I have never had to do that, fortunately. Ironically, today was the first day I ever used the voice through the Ring camera, and that was because I heard the notification go off. Depending on the time, I usually will know, oh, it's the housekeeper, oh, it's the gardener, oh, it's the guest arriving. But it was an odd time of day, and I wasn't expecting anyone to be there. So you could look through the live view, and I saw someone standing on the porch with what looked like a map of paint swatches, and he was just standing there on my porch at the front door. So eventually, I just, through the Ring camera, I asked, can I help you? And we had a little conversation back and forth, and I just said, you're at the wrong address. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, and then he left. But that's something that has really helped me. Also, I don't allow any smoking on my property, and that has helped me to see people that are not following those rules. And again, I just send them the friendly reminder through the website. So that's, I'd say that piece of automation has helped me a lot, just having peace of mind.
And the Ring doorbell is awesome too, because you have the spotlight, we have that in our backyard, and then the Ring doorbell is great because, whenever someone's throwing a party, what do? They walk up to the door and ring the doorbell, right? And then if they're carrying beer with them or alcohol, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna stop by, and it's great to be able to have tabs and you have noise aware that tells you how high the pitch goes. It's a lot of ways you can just mitigate that. What other stuff do you guys use?
Well, in Palm Springs, we specialize in parties. My listing does say we're not a party house. I let people read into that whatever they want. But oftentimes I'll know ahead of time, they'll say it's a bachelorette party or we're celebrating a birthday, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a destination, so it's not like the whole neighborhood's gonna come. Usually they're all traveling together, so it is the 8 people max that are going to be there, hopefully. And because I have the communication with the guests and I'm clued in and we're doing the personal check-in, we will reiterate in a text when they're on their way what the rules are. And again, we do the personal check-in in Palm Springs, so they're acknowledging and signing that they understand what the rules are. To how many guests overnight, how many guests during the day, and how many cars can park there. So they have to say that they understand that. They have to understand they can't play music outdoors 24/7, and after 10, or is it 9, I always forget, no noise can be audible, even talking. And we tell people that. Some people get mad and write that in the review that the city of Palm Springs is unreasonable, but they should know that before they come and they go up.
We had to put signs all over next to the exit doors, no going outside after 9 p.m., period. Because our neighbors have kids, and we're like, sorry, don't go outside, So, do they go outside and smoke a cigarette or something? Yeah, but they're quiet at least, because they're notified at the exit every time. So, what about you, Kyle? Do you use anything else?
Yeah, as far as other technology pieces, we use Nest thermostats as well to be able to remotely monitor who's cranking the heat up to god awful levels there. We also use security cameras on front and back doors just to be able to kind of monitor who's in and out as well. The noise meters are a great way to mitigate party issues as well. We've also found that building relationships with neighbors is really effective for that too. So going over, introducing yourself, exchanging numbers, talking to them about what your goals are with the property and what you're envisioning the use of it, that can really help to mitigate an issue before it even happens, because they're gonna call you first. They're not gonna call the police first because they don't want that hassle either. So that can help you to contact the guest, explain to them why it's an issue, explain to them what's going on with your neighbor or whatever else. We haven't had that come up, but we did intentionally build relationships with the people around us so that we had the opportunity to do that. So I do think it's an important piece of that.
I think it's important to understand too, with the neighbor piece, we told our neighbors, we charge $1,000 fine. If they throw a party and you guys find out about it, we'll give you the money. Because, and you don't ever want to hire your neighbors, like for the trash cans and stuff, because if you ever have to fire them, they're not calling the city. But anyways, we got a question in the back over here?
Yeah, I think that was a good point in terms of, when you're buying the property and you're introducing yourself to the neighbors, what do you just say, hey, I'm doing short-term rentals, or like, what's that?
Corporate rentals. Sometimes you don't want to say Airbnb, they have a negative taste in their mouth, but what do you do?
Yeah, for the markets we're in, it's all tourism-based stuff. Everyone knows that whole town runs on tourism. So it's not a surprise that we're doing that. A lot of times the conversation more revolves around who we view as our kind of target demographic. We're going after families that are traveling there to view the whatever natural attractions there are there or whatever else. So it's more kind of communicating our goals for the property in a way that hopefully makes them feel comfortable with the type of people that we envision in and out of there.
Well, you talked a lot about infractions, like whatever, too many people or smoking or whatever.
called Airbnb. If they break the rules, you can ask them to leave, and they don't get their money back. So it's pretty cut and dry. They've signed a contract. They've read the rules, they understand what the rules are. If they break the rules, there's consequences.
If you go that route.
Maybe a monetary penalty for them?
Yeah, if you go that route, document, because in our experience, Airbnb support is terrible. I would have loved to talk to our Airbnb representative about that because they are very hands-off, and rightfully so. I mean, they're charging a 3% fee for a booking. They don't have a lot of vested interest in being really involved in the day-to-day operations of those rentals. So they are extremely hands-off. If you can document an infraction with hard evidence, then they will be supportive, but if not, then they are gonna just say, you guys gotta work it out.
Documentation is very key there. You have to know how to handle it, you know, so as far as putting it in.
I also list the cost of an infraction.
Yeah.
So in my description where I'm talking about no smoking, I also let them know that if the house smells like smoke, I will collect the entire damage deposit in full.
And same thing with like broken stuff. If someone steals a towel, I know people that charge $25 a towel because they gotta go buy more. You know, that's labor time too on top of that. And then, you know, throwing parties, a lot of times you have alarm systems in your house with motion detectors, and you use like an August lock, which is an automatic lock system on your front door, and you can set it and say, at this time to this date, here's the code. After that, it changes consistently. And if someone throws a party, and you can say, look, Airbnb's been notified, the authorities have been notified, just wanted to give you guys a call and give you a heads up and let you know that you have 30 minutes to vacate the residence. The alarm will go off with the motion detector, the lock will be stopped, and you won't be able to access the property anymore. You guys got 30 minutes, and we've seen videos that they've taken off there where they're rushing out the door to get out this thing, because they're like, the cops will call and we gotta get out of this, but it's great to be able to have that. But then again, you got people with the August lock going through and pressing the video doorbell, going, I can't get into the property because they're pressing the doorbell and not the lock, you know? You get technology issues with that too, you know, so. Question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I have Airbnbs, I have 8 of them. I've been doing it for 10 years. They actually contacted me back in the day. I wanted to make a couple comments about technology. I also use a party squasher. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this. This measures the amount of devices that are connected to cellular towers. So, or the internet. So you can tell if you're expecting 6 people and you've got 20 devices that are connected, you're getting an alarm saying you're only expecting 6.
It's called party washer?
Party
Squasher.
Yeah, so that's handy. I've been able to tell that I've got a lot more devices on the property than I was expecting. Or I'm not expecting anyone and something's going off, and then I'll check the cameras and see my gardener's there. I'm like, oh, okay, it's my gardener. I use Arlo cameras myself, wireless. You put them just about anywhere, and I connect some of them through the Wink system. I use Schlage, doorbell, door locks. So again, like you were saying with the August locks, you can give someone a code, change the code, press it on your phone and turn it on, and, you know, or lock it if people leave the doors unlocked, which they were doing for some reason in Malibu.
It automatically locks.
It'll automatically lock it, so that's handy. The Nest thermostat is another way to sort of control things. So there are a lot of technology things that you can use. So the cameras, the noise aware, the party squasher, the Schlage lock, the Nest, and I want to say also my experience when they smoke or have parties, Airbnb does nothing as far as the security deposit. You can say it's $1,000 fine for smoking, Airbnb will not enforce it on your behalf. I've been through that a couple times with them, so you are on your own getting that money back. They will do damage, but it's usually limited to the actual cost of the damage. So your labor to go buy new towels, you're not gonna cover even if you prove your system did it, so.
And what I've found is that if you documented it up front, you can just hold it for me, Dave.
It's helpful.
No, if you've documented it up front, here's the cost in your listing of these items and shown them that, you have a better chance of getting some of those things. But still, still a fact.
Yeah, it really relies on the rapport you have with your guests. So if you've had good, clear communication from them from the get-go, and you approach the issue in a collaborative way to get it resolved, you're much more likely to collect whatever fee you want to charge them for that than if you approach it in a way that's attacking them or immediately raising the issue to Airbnb's level or whatever else. So, working collaboratively with your guests is going to resolve a lot more issues than going and telling Daddy Airbnb.
Question here, and then we'll go back here in a sec.
To ask her, I like Google Wi-Fi too. Then I don't know if you guys ever used that, but there's little pods in it. You can control the entire Wi-Fi. You can see how many people are on and off, and at a press of a button, you can turn all the Wi-Fi off the house. So that's cool. I was gonna ask, how do you guys deal with if you guys have any issues? Have you ever had? I had a client who was Airbnb in the house, and then the lady didn't want to leave, and she flooded the house. And it was like a condo, and then she just locked the door, and she opened the door. What? Have you guys had anything like that?
Not yet. But you don't have a lease, so that's why it's good sometimes with VRBO. Sometimes you have the option of getting a lease or contract in place in some cases. But I have never gone through an eviction or something like that with this. But I don't know. Have you guys dealt with this at all?
Well, I know we're down this path of infractions and misbehaving, but fortunately, I have had wonderful guests for the most part. I would say 98, 99% of my guests are wonderful, amazing, kind, conscientious, they're respectful of the property, they're clean, and they follow the house rules. I have had some that misbehave. Fortunately, not ever in a way that I can't laugh at it now. But there are some people that I almost feel like I have to babysit them. They have childish behavior. They know the rules and they still do what they want to do. But fortunately, almost all my guests have been great.
You gotta be careful too. I've heard about instances where Airbnb has shut down hosts because they found did the host do it or the guest do it? They'll put like a small video camera like next to the smoke detector or something like that, and you don't notice it. If that happens, you're done. Airbnb's shutting you down immediately.
Yeah.
And so obviously you can't record inside the house, but technology can work against you in certain cases like that.
By the way, you should disclose if you've got any outside cameras, any surveillance.
Absolutely.
Any noise where it
Right.
should all be disclosed.
Right.
So they will shut you down.
Let me go back here and then I'll come over here in just a second. She had a question and then we'll go over here.
My question was about evictions. If any of eviction to
If there's an
happen
eviction,
in the
what
middle
do
of
you do?
night, what do you do? I mean, how really you deal with that situation?
Call an eviction attorney right away? I mean, see, I haven't had to deal with it, and I think it's a different scenario because you're dealing with short-term rentals with no lease that aren't subject to tenant-landlord laws, so you wouldn't think you'd have to go through the same eviction stuff. You might just call the police and say, get them out of my house, and they can do that, so, but I don't know. So we got a question here, and then we'll come over here.
Okay, thanks. Actually, what you were talking about, having really good tenants, that was my first question of a group of them. How to weed out like bad guests? Is it just by looking at the reviews, or is there some of the tricky guests?
So you could set up your requirements for your guests on the platforms. So keep in mind that this is your business, so you get to run it exactly the way you want, and Airbnb or HomeAway, they have fields in the listing that you can specifically make requirements or set up your policies and procedures or add the rules and regulations. So you can build it out the way that is comfortable for you, that is suitable for what you accept or don't accept. Sorry, what was the other part of the question?
It's about guests. How did you look at the reviews?
Oh, I see. So, yeah, I usually, I do use Instant Book, which is a feature that's available that someone can go in and they can just book immediately. However, I also require every item that is required by Airbnb. I click that it's on, and every single one of those has to, the guest has to, I guess, match every single one of those requirements. So for example, they have to make sure that they have their photo ID, they have to have a good positive review from previous stays. They have to have a government ID in there. So there's a long list. I check every single one of them in order to accept Instant Book. Otherwise, they just have to send me an inquiry, and I ask questions. I always ask to make sure that they complete their profile on Airbnb. Some of them won't do it, or even on HomeAway. And I ask them to also send me some brief information about themselves and who they're traveling with. I want to know also why they're in town. I ask them what brings you to Long Beach, or if they'll say, oh, I'm on a getaway weekend with my girlfriend or my wife or my husband. Then I'll ask them specifically, what made you choose Long Beach for your getaway weekend? So I want to know, what are they doing there? What are they going to be doing while they're there? And I want them to share a little bit about themselves. So I want to know, I'll even use the Airbnb language about profiles, which asks, maybe what's their occupation, what are their interests, what are their hobbies, etc. So I get a little bit of insight about them. I don't want them to write a whole book, but I want some insight.
And you don't rent to the high school kid that's 18 years old that is in June for a night stay or a weekend either. Stay away from the people that live in that area for the most part, that have a bunch of friends and.
Or if you do, don't be surprised in the condition they leave the house, right? Again, Palm Springs, we had some guests stay, and the housekeeper's always the first ones to let me know when the place, because I always ask them, what's the condition of the house? What's the condition of the house? One time it looked like a distillery. I mean, there were bottles everywhere, and they had to just up and leave and catch their flight. And I was like, it seems odd, because it was a good reviews, good communication back and forth. It's just odd behavior, because 98%, that's the number I use too, 98% of the guests are great. And this was just a mess. They didn't there was no noise infraction, no cops were called, nothing was broken. It was just a complete mess. And then later on, my business partner said to me, well, it was Splash Weekend, which is our EDM pool party weekend. So these people were getting up, or maybe never even went to sleep, and were trying to catch flights. So that's why the house was left in that condition. And I laughed. I actually laughed and cut them a break and did not give a bad review because of the circumstances.
Question here?
So sort of an answer for the lady back there, because my mom lived in a motel when I was a kid, and there's innkeeper rules, and I don't know if the cities are charging bed tax, so that's a question I have later, but if they are charging bed tax, then you're an innkeeper, and you can call the cops, it's defrauding an innkeeper. If they don't pay, you can kick them out immediately. It's all the motel rules. But if it's not, if it's considered a rental, then you have to go through eviction, which is like 2 to 3 months, which you don't want. You want to be an innkeeper. But I don't know, are you guys getting charged bed tax? Well, then you're an innkeeper then, so those laws apply. You're like a motel.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back one step there. So you really can't turn off Instant Book because you're penalized by Airbnb's algorithms by doing so. So they force you to blanket approve anyone who's going to stay there, and then they will penalize you if you cancel that reservation. So, I mean, one point that I would want to make there is you don't want to be in a race to the bottom. So, if you're catering towards a higher end experience, you're going to get better guests as well. So there's in most major cities, you can rent a full house on Airbnb for less than the cost of an average hotel room. So for a family, it's a great way to kind of cover the cost of a vacation while also being able to cook for themselves and do all these other great things that Airbnb provides to them. So if you're really marketing the space to the types of clientele that you want there, you're like 98, 99% of the time, you're going to have really, really positive experiences and really enjoy the interaction with your guests and things like that. There's always going to be a couple things that don't go smoothly, and at times you just got to take that experience, learn from it, and move on, and not get caught up in it. But it's going to happen at some point, regardless. But
question here. Can you guys talk about how you find your teammates, like your cleaners, your people who take out the trash, right? Where do you find them, and then how do you screen them?
Can you guys go over all the team members that you guys can think of as well at the same time that go into this? Because obviously, you talked about the cleaners, but there's more, of course.
Yeah, our realtors have been our biggest allies on that front because these are people that they're using on a number of different projects for different priorities at different times. So we've always gone to our realtors first to say, hey, do you know a good such and such for whatever we need done at the house? And they're always happy to provide that. I mean, your turnover person, your cleaner, is the most essential part of the operation for sure. So someone that you trust, that's really going to be there every time you need them, and that's diligent in kind of doing the little things that need to be done, whether it's replacing batteries or running, pick up a couple supplies or things like that. We've had great experiences with our cleaners, and part of that is we incentivize them to really be our allies there. So we have a flat fee that we pay them for each cleaning. If we get great reviews, we bonus them out at the end of the month. We want them to share in our profit when they've really helped us build that business and improve the properties. So I'm a big believer in taking care of your people every step of the way, because they are the ones that are really boots on the ground running the thing when it comes down to it.
And you really gotta train those cleaners in a lot of detail, the way you want it cleaned and everything. Like we've gone through and taken pictures of every room, the exact way we want it set it up, so they can show us, and there's apps that they can give you pictures and all kinds of stuff for it, so that cleaner's super important.
Yeah, and they know the property better than you do at some point. And you've got your core team that you're dealing with all the time, which they're actually easier to deal with because you're always dealing with your cleaners, your gardeners, your exterminator, your pool person. Those are people that are coming once or twice or more times to the house. The other people you need to have on speed dial though is a plumber, an electrician, a roofer, all these other people for when a major problem happens, a major system, and those always happen when the guests are staying there. and it always happens on a weekend. It's never from 9 to 5.
It's at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and you're like, great.
Always. And you have to have those people on speed dial too. And realtor is a great person that can let you know who's good, especially if you're not from the area, but word of mouth as well.
Yeah, I would agree that the cleaning team is so crucial. I'm so blessed with the cleaning team that I have because they are so reliable. And what I came to find out is that eventually your cleaning team will be at the house far more often than you will be, and at some point you could really not even go there because you know the type of work that they're doing, you know how reliable they are, and they're really running the show eventually. So the cleaning team is definitely the most important. It also now Airbnb, for example, on your front page of your listing, they even make notes that will say, oh, the last 12 guests said that Elizabeth's house was sparkling clean. And that's a result of my cleaning team. They just do an outstanding job and they're very reliable. I've given them little gift cards every now and then just to say thank you for doing a great job. I've even printed out that page that talks about how sparkling clean that the guests found the house, and I send that to them with a thank you card and just let them know that I really appreciate them and that they're doing a great job.
How much are you guys paying these cleaning crews per cleaning?
Mine is a flat fee, it's $80.
Don't be a unit size though, right? So,
yes, absolutely.
It's proprietary.
I'll tell you this much, in one of the markets we're in, we had our cleaner is a former general contractor who decided he could make a lot more money running a cleaning company than he could doing GC work. So they make a lot of money, and there's a wide variety there. And one thing I would definitely recommend is look at what everyone else is charging as a cleaning fee to make sure that you're kind of in line with your market. And we like the flat rate. There's a lot of benefits to doing hourly too, but kind of explore that with your cleaners too. Have a conversation about it.
In all seriousness, we have a flat rate, which is a pretty good market rate, and then we build on that depending on if there's dog hair. We didn't know. Sometimes we collect extra for dogs, so we pass that on to the housekeepers because it takes longer. And then we also give them a bump if they're doing a quick turn. That means they probably have to have a friend come and help them, and they're doing it on a shorter timetable. So there's 2 people instead of 1 person doing it. So we always compensate them for that. And if they're just complaining and they're saying the place was a mess, they get a bonus.
And you want to be careful too. Sometimes they'll do the linen service. You might have linen turnover people that help with that aspect. Because if you have a big house with a bunch of beds, it can take hours sometimes to do the laundry. And so they'll have a linen service. You want to have your stager, your emergency people are really
important. So that emergency contractor that can get out there like immediately, it doesn't really matter what the cost is. I mean, I think Jay Massey that runs a lot of these, he was telling a story about bed bugs that came in and it was the lady's wedding night.
Termites.
Termites. Was it termites? And the whole place was like filled with all these termites. And they had to go and do all this stuff literally in a couple of hours while they left and got them a hotel room on their wedding night. It was all over her on her wedding night. They gave them positive reviews. They fixed it in like a couple of hours and got out there. That's how, I mean, you get to that point with your team and you are in great shape, and it's that emergency person, so you don't have to be the one driving all the way over to your place or finding someone else at the last second to do that. That's the key.
And that's a good point, to take a loss sometimes. Like, you know, if it means keeping people happy and making it a good experience for them, take the loss, move on. Like, it's well worth that in the long term.
Right.
We'll get a little personal. I know everybody wants to know, how much are you guys making per unit a month?
On average. On average.
Airbnb average across the board is 20K profit. That's proprietary as well.
I'm in the black, so I'm making money.
Yes, I've been in the black from day one. I typically make double traditional rental. Summertime was amazing. It was incredible.
Yeah, it really depends on the area, right, and what property. If you have a single family house, the one we have in Garden Grove, we're in it for about 25 grand, and we're making $2 grand a month. The one in Memphis, we're in for like 15 grand. We're making about $1,000 to $1,250 a month. You know, but in the beginning, it wasn't like that. It takes that time, and we're now breaking even now and starting to become positive on our other units in Costa Mesa, and same thing in Glendale. It takes a ramp-up period where you're stressed out, thinking you didn't do it right, and you're making mistakes in the beginning. Right.
Well,
right.
break even to you and I mean, there's fees that we pay ourselves, so we're above break
For the
even.
scale piece, because you're like, allocate the right people doing the right stuff at the right cost, and then you should be profitable like that.
Right. Go ahead, a question here.
Yeah, what are the platforms are you comfortable with that you like using? You know, Airbnb, HomeAway, and you mentioned Booking.com. Tell me more about those.
What other ones I know that's all you're using. What else are you guys using?
TripAdvisor is really trying to get into the space as well. So they have a new kind of part of their website devoted to that. Yeah, I mean, building your own website is really, I think, a game changer as well. Driving traffic through other means, whether it's sponsored Instagram, Facebook posts. There's a lot of kind of branded houses that have their own Facebook pages, and people who have multiple listings that have their own Facebook pages, because you get repeat customers. We've gotten the same people every summer that we've had some of these properties. So really kind of capitalizing on that and removing Airbnb as a middleman can help as well. So, you know, we're really trying to drive traffic to our own site that they can book through as well. That's all synced up to these other platforms too. But to me, that's really where there's a lot more freedom long term to kind of do what you want with your listing, add video. I mean, it drives me crazy that Airbnb doesn't allow video. I think it's batshit insane, but yeah. So I mean, there's ways to kind of get around that if you have a unique property that you can really market in a unique way as well.
That marketing piece is key though, is you're retaining all the people's information to remarket to them and have discounts to them later to come stay again. That's really how you build yourself to where you are impenetrable from the marketing, you know, of other people and the expansion of that business, you know, across the board. So.
I use just Airbnb. I'm going to try Booking.com. Their model is a little bit different, where you pay them a commission the following month, and you know exactly what you're charging. So with Airbnb, I'm not exactly sure what the guest is paying. There's the 3% that the host pays, but then it's a sliding scale what the guest pays. So you really don't have complete control on the pricing. But that being said, I do love the platform. It's all in one place. It's built my business. Yes, I do get repeat business, but I still funnel it through Airbnb, because if anything does go wrong with someone else from the party from the previous year, so if I get a bachelorette party, it'll be a friend of a friend that'll book me the next year or for a different holiday. But if anything goes sideways, I can always call Airbnb, the big brother, and they can be an arbiter and sort things out. And to me, that's invaluable. And also having the contracts and everything, they figured all that out. They figured out the platform. That's what they do. So for me, it's easier to use one platform, although I do want to test and have an A/B test with Booking.com and see how that goes. And I'm not opposed to having the two, but I do really like having the power and that arbiter there if something goes sideways.
How long was that ramp up period? When you first get your Airbnb up, you know, how long does it take to get to where you have consistent booking, you know, your research?
Yeah, so the question was, for those who can't hear it, how long does it take to kind of get it up and run? Once you buy one, you get it established, how long does it take to get it in the black?
I think for me, it was also part of the timing, and it might be for you based on where you set yours up. So, for example, one of mine I started on Labor Day weekend in September. October, November was my slowest time, and this past year as well. Kind of October, November, it's kind of slow, but it definitely picks up. Right now, in February, I am increasing my rates and getting them as we move into spring and summer. There is a lot more movement. People are moving around more. They're getting ready for the kids to get off of school or go on their romantic getaways or just start exploring because of the weather. So I think it's timing also. I think, you know, because I started in September, I hit slow months first, but by the beginning of the year, I was doing well.
In October through January, it's like, you can't rent a property during that time anyways, a normal long-term renter, because nobody moves. And so, like, you have that issue, but then you'll get booked during the holidays, specific weeks of those holidays, but you'll be slow the rest of the time because nobody wants to go anywhere. So those types of things can be affected.
Yeah, it depends so much on the market and the particular property. I mean, you know, depending on, like if you go on and search a location and there's 3,000 plus listings in the results for that, you know, whatever spot you choose, that's gonna mean that there's a ton of competition, and you know, getting your ramp up is gonna take a lot longer than if you go and there's 60 listings in the location or something like that. So, you know, really do that due diligence on the front end of where you're trying to build this, you know, what's the competition like, what are the rates you can expect like, and then, you know, that will really influence how that ramp up phase works.
And really just having extreme discounting at the beginning. Actually, Airbnb suggests that when you put out a new listing. What I did on my last listing, once I had the pictures ready, I was still taking care of other odds and ends, but I had enough to put the listing out there, had the great prices, was able to get some folks booked up, had a few in a row, and got some good reviews in a row. So then immediately I was able to boost the prices because people could go on there and they say, oh, I was already a super host, so that helped. But they saw, hey, he's had 3 weekends in a row and everyone gave a good review, so that helps. But on the other side of the coin, when you're first starting out, and when I was doing research in Casa Robles, just going and looking at Airbnb, I was looking at other listings. I saw one where they were going through an agency. The agency didn't clean, you know, it's the left hand and right hand and knowing what's going on, and the agency didn't clean their house. Their first review was awful. Guess what? There's no more reviews, and it was 3 months later. So you really have to be careful at the onset and price it right and have even better service than you ever do going forward. So you've got to get those good reviews.
You gotta be careful about those little intricacies as well, like, don't have people check out on a major holiday and check in on a major holiday because you can't get it cleaned during that time, or we had our main management team having to go on Thanksgiving Day to clean our Memphis unit because someone was moving in that day, and we're like, oh crap, we didn't think about that. You know, so there's things like that you gotta be careful about.
So it is now past 9 o'clock, so we're gonna cut the panel off, sorry. So first of all, let me get a big round of applause for these. I know you have more questions. They are still willing to answer questions. We're all gonna head over to North Italia here. And then, like I said, we'll have food, should be actually out there right now. There'll be drinks. Next month is our panel, March the 13th. It's all about preparing for a downturn. So if you haven't RSVP'd, please RSVP for that panel soon. Thank you guys for coming. We'll see you next month.
good.
How's the project going?
It's a project. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah.